We are living through some really strange times, and I'm pretty sure we are all sick and tired of all the AI narratives at this point. I, for one, am spending my days trying to find joy in the things I'm passionate about, but I'm also keeping an eye on the AI news cycle just to make sure I'm not completely left behind. And, if I'm being honest, despite all the noise and recycled stories, very little is actually happening in the space. After all, this is a 7-year-old story outlining the dangers of releasing a powerful model like GPT-2 to the general public. 7 years later, we are flooded with the exact same narratives, but now the danger comes from Fable, Mythos, Soul, or the CCP. I also feel like everything that had to be said on the topic was also recycled ad nauseam, with content creators, me included, covering all the possible angles of every possible story. Depending on the day, on YouTube, either Sam Altman is winning the AI race, Dario Amodei is winning the AI race, or the Chinese are winning the AI race. AI is either taking all our jobs, or it is completely a bubble that will soon pop. People are either being fired because of the 10x productivity AI gains, or they are fired because of the bad economy. Engineers are either doing loop agentic AI supervised prompt engineering and don't read the code anymore, or they are completely certain that the slop cannon will eventually turn back and bite us in the ass hard. Somehow, the only thing everybody seems to agree on is that coding is dead, so you shouldn't bother learning it anymore. Then, the same guys saying coding doesn't matter are explaining with a straight face that you should actually master programming concepts in order to fully control the model and get to the best possible outcome. So don't code, but master the coding concepts.
Okay.
While I'm pretty much over all this AI nonsense, and I found new hobbies like losing all my hard-earned money betting on memory at the end of the AI bubble, when the CEO of one of the biggest tech giants in the world has an honest take about AI, I'm actually paying attention. In a recent post, Satya Nadella discusses an idea based on an old economic concept known as Arrow's information paradox. It was introduced by economist Kenneth Arrow and describes a fundamental problem with selling information. Imagine that I claim to have a piece of information that is extremely valuable to you. Naturally, before paying for it, you would like to know what that information is and whether it is actually useful. But the moment I reveal it, you already possess it, which means there is no longer a particularly strong reason for you to pay me. So the seller cannot prove the value of the information without giving it away, while the buyer cannot properly evaluate it without already receiving it. Patents are one of the mechanisms we created to partially deal with this problem. An inventor can publicly explain how an invention works while still receiving temporary legal protection over its commercial use. But Nadella argues that AI has created the reverse version of this paradox. This time, the buyer, which is the company you work for, already owns the valuable information. It has the code, the customer data, the internal documents, the business processes, and, presumably, a fairly comprehensive collection of complaints about you from HR. But in order to benefit from the AI product, it must reveal that information to the seller. So you pay one of these trustworthy guys for access to a model, and then you spend months connecting that model to the exact information that makes your company different from every other company using the same model. But a general-purpose AI model is not particularly useful inside a real organization. Intelligence becomes useful only after it is combined with private context. As a result, we are forced to train this so-called intelligence on how our businesses are working. And the more useful we want the system to become, the more information we have to expose. At the most basic level, this includes documents, all the source code, support tickets, meeting notes, and database records. But the deeper problem is that modern AI systems also generate an entirely new category of information while they are being used. Prompts reveal what employees are trying to accomplish, every correction explains what the model misunderstood, and every evaluation defines what a good answer looks like inside a specific company. Nadella calls this AI exhaust, which is the byproduct of normal sanctioned use. In his words, it leaks almost imperceptibly, trace by trace, correction by correction, eval by eval. Nothing gets breached and nobody violates a data handling policy, but the system leaves something valuable behind every time it runs. Let's say that a company builds an AI agent for handling customer refunds. The original data might contain the refund policy, the customer's order history, and a list of previous support conversations. That is already sensitive information, but most companies are feeding such data to the models as soon as they enable an agent in their system. But, on top of that, imagine that an experienced support employee reviews the agent's decisions. The agent approves a refund, and the employee rejects it because the customer has already received 3 exceptions during the past 6 months. Then, the agent rejects another refund, and the employee approves it because the product was part of a known defective batch. Next, the agent follows the written policy perfectly in a third case, but the employee overrides it because the customer is responsible for a major enterprise account. Those corrections contain information that does not necessarily exist in any document. They describe how the company actually makes decisions, and in many businesses, this is the mode that competitors cannot easily copy. After thousands of examples, the feedback data may become more valuable than the original refund policy because it captures the unwritten rules, exceptions, and trade-offs that experienced employees have learned over many years. And the obvious question is, who owns that dataset? Most enterprise AI discussions currently focus on whether a provider trains on customer prompts, whether the data is encrypted, and whether one customer's information can accidentally appear in another customer's response. Sure, those are important questions, but they mostly focus on protecting the original inputs. The reverse information paradox points to a much larger boundary. The obvious objection is that we already had this exact argument 15 years ago when cloud was the buzzword of the day. For those of you who are younger, just imagine every company adding cloud to its landing page in exactly the same way they are adding agentic today. At that time, companies were terrified of putting their data on somebody else's servers, so enterprise contracts were created, security improved, and the world kept moving. And, to some extent, that objection is fair, but that still does not address the more interesting part of the problem, which is the direction in which all this information is flowing. Even if the provider never trains on a single one of your prompts, your corrections still show where the product fails, which decisions require human judgment, and which features companies are willing to pay for. And what's really funny is that in our effort to chase that much desired 10x productivity, we are voluntarily giving model providers access to almost the entire intellectual property we own. For decades, large companies treated this information as one of their most valuable assets. Source code was heavily restricted, employees signed aggressive confidentiality agreements, and entire security teams were created to make sure that sensitive information never left the company. In big tech, even the suspicion that someone took a few confidential files to a competitor can lead to years of litigation. Earlier this month, for instance, Apple sued OpenAI and two former Apple employees, accusing them of misappropriating trade secrets to support OpenAI's hardware ambitions. According to the lawsuit, former Apple executive Tang Tan allegedly sent himself confidential supplier information and encouraged Apple employees interviewing at OpenAI to bring physical components for what was described as a show and tell. Another former employee, Cheng Liu, is accused of accessing Apple's systems and downloading confidential hardware files. These are just allegations at the moment, and the courts will have to determine what actually happened, but the reaction tells us something important about how valuable this information is considered to be. Apple is willing to take the golden goose of technology companies to court over supplier details and hardware designs that may have been taken by a handful of former employees. Meanwhile, thousands of other businesses are connecting external AI platforms directly to their GitHub repositories, customer databases, internal documentation, Slack conversations, support systems, and product roadmaps. And since I mentioned corporate espionage, here is your awesome trivia of the day. In 2006, an insider tried to sell a sample of a new secret Coke product to Pepsi for $1.5 million. Pepsi, however, didn't even look at it, and they immediately handed the letter over to the FBI, who ran an undercover sting operation to bust the thief. Corporations used to treat rival secrets as so radioactive that touching them could get you thrown in federal prison. Fast forward to today, and those exact same corporations are now forcing their employees to stream their entire codebase, product roadmaps, and internal strategy docs into cloud AI endpoints. If you like this video, you should consider joining our community, where I'm posting more dedicated weekly content. Please don't forget to smash all the buttons, and see you in the next one.